Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. Going to be covering a couple of Wisp builds. She's incredibly popular in the clan and alliance, so I decided to make a video sharing what my videos, or what not my videos, but my builds are. I have level capped, survivals, disruptions, cascades, with essentially the same Wisp build, more or less. There have been some modifications because of the Zeraman Arcanes and the Archon mods. This is a no shard setup. So as you can see, no shards. So going over the build is going to be real straightforward. It's a power strength with a little bit of range. Power strength, I'm not going to go over the abilities because Wisp is frankly just so popular, everybody knows what they are. It's a moat buff and breach surge buff build. It's got a ton of forma in it, including an aura forma. But because of how much forma and the fact that there's no umbral mods on here, it actually leaves a ton of flexibility. So just to do the math, see 284. Okay, 284 plus the 30 from Archon Intensify when it procs, plus energy conversion, plus 60 from Augmented, plus 45 from Vigor, plus 20 from Vazarin, which we're going to be using, is going to get you to a little shy of 500. Obviously, you can shard up if you want to, though honestly, for this build, if you don't want to modify it in any way, I would recommend throwing a duration sharded, or maybe, to be honest, probably putting in Augur Message. That's also one of the builds that I have, just to get the duration up. So these are flex slots as far as I see. If you don't like the Archon Intensify style, like you constantly like having like the bonus on demand, and you don't want a health tank at all, and to be honest, let me tell you, if you're in any way, shape, or form interested of using this build for higher level runs, you better not be health tanking. Because as soon as the enemy gets over like 1800, regardless of what the enemy is, it's a one shot if your shield gate isn't up. So how are we going to keep Wisp alive? There's actually a couple layers, and some of it's built into her kit. There's actually 2 oh shit buttons in her kit. There's rolling guard, and obviously Old Faithful jump into operator, right? So for her ability, that's going to be how we stay alive. Will-O-Wisp, 3-second iframe, pretty straightforward. And you also have her passive, which is invisibility and flight. Provided you don't shoot something, you will remain invisible. Breach Surge has temporary blindness. It is a very decent duration because of the slight negative on duration. It's only, 11 and change. But this build is very straightforward. Abuse the Archon mods. Wisp is really easy to proc Intensify with. Anything. Honestly, you're probably going to be procking Intensify mostly with your Panzer. Because when the moat heals the Panzer, it procs. You should not be health tanking with this. Though, to be honest, just in terms of like easy going, running around the star chart, even Steel Path, I do have Rolling Guard and a min rank adaptation on here, but I didn't want to form of the last 2 spots because it would lock me into a build. And personally, I didn't feel Wisp ever needed like the triple Umbra build. Obviously, she can use it. Obviously, it makes her hella tanky. But her base armor is 175. If it was like 200 or 250, I could see maybe thinking about armor. But the fact is that at higher level, if with this frame, because it doesn't have any built-in reduction, and she doesn't have any way to spam her shields back unless you helmet something onto her. There's no real solid way to shield gate with Wisp. Obviously, you could put like Molt or something onto her, right? But in order to shield gate, you would have to have flow on here. In order to be able to spam it, so you can get from rolling guard, spam shield gate for 4 seconds until rolling guard comes up again, and then rolling guard, and hopefully by then you've got your couple of seconds of coverage of invulnerability where you can get out of the problem. So that because of the blind rage, and because we're not running streamline, and we're definitely not running fleeting experience, it just felt a little expensive. So this is, let me explain to you how I keep her alive. We know she has the power strength. 489 is nothing to mess around with. It is a solid power strength for Wisp. Obviously, you can min-max it higher. But the combination of just running Equilibrium, the synth mods on the Panzer, is a ton of energy. And between that, getting the energy and the health from Equilibrium, and the energy back from Archon Stretch, which you should be proccing damn near always, you're not going to have energy issues with this build. Because you just need the reservoirs. If you're doing like a disruption, you're not really going to be moving that much. And part of the benefit of this is because the range is what it is. It's not an insane range, but it is a large enough range that you can easily place this in an area and people will just naturally run over it without running like 100% range, and somebody has to intentionally walk over it. I mean, obviously, if that's your play style, like you like a more like run and gun play style, or you're doing like an exterminate, you would want a little bit more duration. But if you're doing a cascade, you're basically running to a new area, dropping a moat, everybody runs over it. So you'll drop it at the entrance to one of the rooms. Or you'll drop it right outside one of the things you're defending. And people can walk over it. So it's like point defense, like really, really rapid mobile defense. So you're dropping the moat exactly where you're going to be. So duration really doesn't matter. Obviously, you don't want to completely dump stat it, but running a little bit of a negative from transient fortitude, it doesn't hurt you. And even when I was doing my cap runs with this build, I didn't feel like I needed more duration. That being said, I brought it up before, I did put more duration on because I was using this to kill Archons for a bit. Until I swapped over to Neja, because obviously damage vulnerability helps, right? Put Zadas on Neja. So the duration helped on this build. But this build right here, if you're looking for something to take inspiration from that is at least certified level cap, as much as that means anymore, this has done level cap several times. This is probably my most level capped setup. And that was before the Molt Arcanes. So, and Archon Shards. You would just run a tiny bit more duration, but I was doing literally a regular Intensify with a regular Stretch. And it was pretty much the same build. And I would do like chance when you pick up a health orb to knock down enemies, and like Arcane Aegis or Arcane Energize, whatever I felt like I needed that mission. But generally, Equilibrium on its own is enough to keep your energy topped up. So that's the build. Let's talk about how to use it. So Wisp at her core is a support frame. And with everything stacked up, we can get 15... Oh, Simulacrum bugged. 1 second. That did not fix it. Sorry, 1 second, 1 second. It's showing that I have the duration. Because that's on one of the other builds, and that is not what we're running. Alright, so there we go. The first time you gotta proc it, the way to get the strongest moat, because there's so many conditionals, obviously, you could do like growing power on the aura slot. And to be honest, it's pretty nice. Don't get me wrong. If you have a crew that really wants to pump up the power strength, and y'all can afford to do four of those arcanes, obviously, God bless you, more power to you. That's a hell of a fun time running around with the extra power strength. But the fact is if I have 500 and change power strength on my frame now, I don't really care about 100 power strength. Like, it's not a deal breaker going from 500 to like 580, like 540 or whatever it was, to 640, right? Now, if I'm dump statting strength and I really, really want strength and the team's running strength auras, that's a big deal. But that's just not the case with Wisp. So the aura slot is hyper flexible. I like the fused reservoir augment, especially when doing cascades. You just dump one right at the beginning. It's pretty easy to keep the buffs up, because when stuff's shooting at you, the Panzer is going to be taking health damage, and that's going to give you the plus 30. You should not be self-procking the 30% bonus. The only time you should be procking it, and this is part of the reason why I do like running slightly lower duration, is if you're moving from spot to spot, you don't need the buffs in terms of survivability. The only one that's giving you any sort of a benefit is the green moat, right? It's giving you the move speed. But if you cast this, walk in, and cast it. 1 second. All you need to do is gain health, and if you're walking near a health moat and you don't have the buff, you will just naturally pick it up, and you can run in 10 seconds or whatever to like the other side of a tile set. And as long as you pick up a health orb, you can easily drop a max power mode. Now, obviously, there's ways you can jack this up even further, and it gets incredibly complicated because of the time frame. Like, I do run the Zacti quite a bit, and one of the things, there's a mod you can equip to your Parazon, and I don't really use it a bunch, but it's definitely there if you like min-maxing, because if you nail it down, if you nail the combo down, it is a notable power jump. This will push the build to almost 600. So you Parazon something, stab something, you got a couple seconds. If you run the Zacti as a primer, it makes it way easier. Let me actually get guys you can stab. Okay. Let's see. Heavy gunner. Nope. Alright, the second one's right. Of course, they're on top of each other. I can't get to him. Hold on. Alright, so you can see it in the top corner. There's our 50%. So, easy enough. It gives you another layer. But the problem becomes the health, the intensify health bonus, or the strength bonus, only lasts for 10 seconds. So, you want to pick up the energy orb, stab something, because when you pick up the energy orb, that buff stays for forever. It creates this little oh, let me stand by something dark. The little swirling blue thing around me. If you can see that with all of the effects in the game, more power to you. I hardly noticed that, but that's how you're supposed to know the buff's up. So you would carry this, stab something, pick up health, and then drop it. Would be the order that you would do something. So I have the buff now. And you would have to remember this in the middle of trying to kill everything in sight, right? So we'll give it another 9 seconds. Okay. Alright, we got the buff. Come over here. Pick that up. Cool. And we got 1740. So that would be the order you need to do it in. The only way that this would be feasible, to be honest, is if you're using a weapon that has something that opens enemies to finishers, and you're just constantly executing. Because if you're running the correct Parazon mods, it gives you health orbs, energy orbs, and if you're running arcanes that provide like a knockdown, like there's an arcane that has a chance on picking up a health orb to knock enemies down. I think it's called Arcane Eruption. You can use it as a sizable form of CC. Because the range on it is massive, especially in Cascade where you're just trying to keep enemies off. Constantly knocking them down isn't anything to sneeze at. Because I think it has like a 30-meter radius on it. I've run that also. Obviously, that is a prime sure-footed build, because you saw me get knocked down by this Acti. So, if you're constantly spamming Mercy Kill, it's a great way to keep your health and energy up, or more importantly, your energy, right? And if you proc everything correctly, you can get a monster buff. So 1740 with only 5 stacks on the arcane, give like 5 stacks worth of power strength from, what is it, augmented? So this is starting the mission with one conditional or three conditionals. So it gets more complicated as you go. So this is like a endurance level cap build. More particularly, I've used this repeatedly for cascades. So how else do you stay alive? Obviously, there's rolling guard. You see the health bar go into iframes. I would highly recommend when you're running around and when you're fashioning your wisp, if you see I'm glowing red, that means I'm stealthed. It's an annoying enough color that I can see it as I'm running around. Because the problem is when I shoot, I become visible. Now it is incredibly quick. Right? It is incredibly quick. But I can still get blown up. And especially later in the missions, when you have like an arson eximus, it's gonna hit you. It's like a half a tile set AoE. Even if you're like trying to pay attention for them, the enemies get decently tanky. They get stacked on top of each other. There's going to be plenty of reasons why you can't kill something fast enough to snipe it to ignore the AoE. Well, if you're or not invulnerable, but if you're invisible, you're still going to get hit with the Arson Eximus AoE, right? So the thing that helps is if you're shooting, iframes, and the iframes cover you being visible. So if you're running around, you're trying to stay mobile, you're going from area to area, you can iframe the time that you're visible, so you can actually do damage while you're jumping around, and you can be like, you can go super hard for like 3 seconds, but do it while you're in the air, and it is more of a play style. I tend to be very airborne when playing Wisp because the passive is just so good. So this allows you to, like, a slight get out of jail free card in the middle of jumping around and actually being able to do damage. Because I'm visible. Because the fact is as good as the 2 is, it requires you to spam it quite a bit. Like, you can stay invisible for quite a long time. And it's honestly one of her biggest strengths. It's mostly going to help you later in the mission, or later in the levels, because you can rolling guard, get airborne, do damage, wait for your shield to break, which it should break almost instantly, and instantly will-o-wisp and be in iframes. So you just want to level it up or shoot it up a little bit, so you're straight into invisibility to be as safe as possible. And one of the more important considerations is you can run protective dash for even more iframes if you're really trying to face tank something. Because one of the issues that happens in, say, like a cascade run, is there's so many magnetic procs and dots going around, and transference interference, that it's really, really hard to just go, oh, well, I'm invisible, and think that's going to cover your ass. You need, what was it? I think Tanner said it. You need like 2 really good oh shit buttons, or you need 2 really good protective abilities or ways to protect yourself, and Wisp almost has 4. So you have your invisibility while airborne, you have rolling guard, you have will-o-wisp, and you have your operator. And to be honest, that is a really solid combination, especially since they sped up the operator. You can get in and out of areas Because a lot of times you're going to be running, what is it, Narabon for Void Strike? No, Matarai. Yeah, this one. This is going to be the default school for doing like cascade runs. Because reason being is Void Strike just makes you your 777 amp, which you should be using for regular mission runs. Unless you're trying to like one shot an angel, right? Then what is it, a 277? But if you're actually trying to kill something tanky, you want the 777. So it's pretty basic, and I'll show you that interaction. Oh, got a 30-second cooldown. 1 second. So the thing that you're going to try to do is you can actually prime the damage on the amp. So if you're trying to like run a status build, you could run like a Sea-Doo, and even the viral from the Panzer will help out a ton. Alright, 6 seconds. So if you're trying to do damage to incredibly tanky enemies, if they don't have armor, they're paper. So remember that. If you're running like an armor strip build, say like you want to do like an Ash or something, or a Loki, getting some armor strip on those guys is incredibly helpful. So easy enough. That's a 190 heavy gunner. It's like 2 shots, but you want the 777. Because even at upper levels, like especially with the quote-unquote 5th O-ship button, the, what is it, the last grasp or last stand operator node, if you're having trouble staying alive, the 777 with Void Strike can more often than not get you back into your frame. I've found that there's issues with other ones, like you have to get headshots, and with some of the enemies being as annoying as they are, if they start piling up on you like you're getting overwhelmed, the 777 can just put the bullet attractor on all of them, because it's like a tunnel, right? Like it's not like a proper cone. It's like a small cone, like a narrow one, but it goes out a pretty good distance. Well, everything that you hit with it gets the bullet attractor, which means all of that crap isn't shooting you. So that's sort of the build. You don't need an insane amount of power strength. Granted, a 2,000 power strength Wisp is hilarious. Don't get me wrong. Like you run like Fishers with like a Nidus. Wisp can hit some insane power strength numbers. So food for thought. This would be like a proper Wisp build, and right now the meta for Cascade runs is still Incarnons. It's still Incarnons. Take like a Latum or like a Fenmore or like a Felarx, and just go do meme levels of damage. Like there's no reason that weapon needs to be doing 17 million unmodded. But those are the meta weapons for doing that stuff right now. And if you want more, like I'm running Eclipse because I'm using the Plasmor and I want to one bang something. But honestly, for like a longer run, Zada's is perfectly fine because you can recast it, right? So it's, and get rid of adaptation. It's the same build. You have the option of running the Duration Arcane here. but you do vigor or augmented, or the duration one, whichever one you feel comfortable with. To get the duration up, it helps you get from spot to spot. But this was a level cap build that I did also. But mostly I was using it for Archons. Because adaptation, I really don't like forming for adaptation unless I'm doing like a min-maxed build. Reason being is adaptation is super good for like star chart stuff. If you're running adaptation and grace with like the tiniest bit of armor and like a little bit of health, you're basically immortal. Like the enemies almost can't kill you. Okay, like that is an incredibly safe frame. Steel Path, little bit more health, but like a rank 0 adaptation still scales up to 90%, and like stacks that you gain while like shield gating will apply. That's the benefit of it, is it's like a conditional mod that replaces your armor, because adaptation applies to your shields also, right? So this build has done level cap runs also with slightly more duration, actually a lot more duration. And there is a little bit of shield gating with this. What is it? If you pop Breach Surge doesn't get, if you run oh, I was using Augur Stretch or Augur Reach. Okay, you can't shield gate with this build. It's close. Actually, hold on. Let's do the math. 0.5 times 0.4. Yeah, you would need the other Augur mod. So if you want to run like an Augur mod on your pistol, you can shield gate with this build. It'll be enough. If you double it, you'll make it by 6. Because 31 is with 1. Whoops, that's times 6. 31 times 2. Yeah, so you'll make it by 6 shield. And you'll be able to shield gate on top of having Will-O-Wisp and Rolling Guard, right? So not a bad old shit button, especially with Breach Surge. It's kind of a quick cast. So this build is super comfy. It gives you the Zada's combo for like the Incarnon weapons. And obviously you've got the fire rate, because it's not like you're building crit on them, so you might as well just double down on it. Allows them to basically blow their entire Incarnon gauge almost instantly. So really good for killing level cap. But anyway, this is just to cover the builds. I was starting to see some really bad builds. Wisp, there's no real point in running tank Wisp unless you just really don't want to utilize her passive. Adaptation and a ton of power strength can only get you so far. But now that you're regularly encountering enemies that have like magnetic damage, it just feels out of place trying to run a tank adaptation Wisp. You're kind of pigeonholed into longer runs, just dropping adaptation altogether, getting on board with shield gating, using Wisp's passive, utilizing her blind. So coming over a group of enemies, you're in the air, pop Breach Surge, and go to town with like an AoE weapon, right? And if you have primes footed, obviously do that, or use like a melee, whatever you want to do. Nuke them to death. It all basically doesn't matter, because you basically have sparks going everywhere, and that's going to eventually beat your damage with enough duration. So, food for thought. It's just I was starting to see some wonky Wisp builds. This is not an Eidolon Wisp, by the way. That uses her critical surge. And this is... I'll show it. you can charge this in one go. So 350, right? Because of all the power strength, it stacks super fast. But it's not really usable though, because it's snipers only. So it, because of the power strength, it's 28.4% crit chance per what? Per meter. So travel 10 meters, get 350% scaling crit chance. My god, could you imagine if it was flat crit chance? Anyway. So food for thought. Very comfy build, but just when you're building Wisp, lean into the power strength. There is no point in running a 130 power strength Wisp. You honestly want to see her around 200 or higher, ideally. And even then, 200 feels kind of weak. Obviously, for a frame with 300 health, regenning your health bar every 30 seconds, or every 3 seconds, 3.5, helps a lot if it was your initial, but the max health is 850, the bonus on top of this, so it pumps you up to like, what is that, 1152? So it's going to take you... So every 13.5 seconds, you're going to be regenning your health bar, which is, it isn't nothing, right? Like that's definitely something. But to be honest, the big improvement is honestly the haste mode and the additional CC you get from the shock. Don't run shock in a camp build. It'll mess up your spawns, or it'll stun the enemies and slow down your kill rate. But if you're trying to blow through and exterminate, boy, you don't give a shit about how the enemies are being killed because you're mowing them down. You're basically running a lawnmower over the tile set. So shock them, it'll just keep them from fighting back, right? So, and anything shoots at you, there's an Eximus. So, it is what it is. It's real comfy. But these are the couple of builds, and and I also have a straight up camp build. Where it's pure power strength, and this one will get pretty high. But this is, it still has range on it, so I still have equilibrium and range on here. Now, if you really want to get the power strength up, slot something in here that gives you power strength, right? Normally on this build, this is where you would have the umbral set, right? To get the power strength from umbral intensify. But not doing that. I'm not triple umbering everything, and I'm only triple umbering primes. So this one allows you to get greedy pull on. This build got nerfed pretty heavily because they cut the range in half. This used to be pretty sizable range, and this would actually allow me to vacuum and loot when I was camping and farming. So obviously with this, I'm going to have to adjust it for more range. It would probably end up having to be... $30 meters is pretty good. I'm probably going to have to swap out for overextended and just eat the power strength loss. It is pretty substantial because I lose 60 and then I lose the energy orb bonus, right? So 110 down the drain. But it would fix the issue, and it's not like I need the power strength anyway for the attack speed. So, or the fire rate. So those are my builds. If you find these useful, by all means copy them. Do with it what you will. Please do not umbral mod these. Because Archon Intensify beats out 2 umbral mods. So if you decide you want a triple umbral wisp, then obviously you're not going to slot Archon Intensify because Umbral Intensify is going to take its place. And Umbral Intensify will give you 77 power strength. But if you're not, then Archon Intensify gives you 60, where 2 Umbrals, where 1's Umbral Intensify, will give you 55. So, food for thought. Pretty comfy build. Adaptations, your flex slot sows energy conversion. Do with it what you will. If you want to spam more prime flow and like a streamline, you got the space for it. You'd have to tone down. You'd have to recover one capacity from somewhere though. So, to each their own. I hope these help. That's the logic behind staying alive. Abuse the shit out of your passive. You have Will-O-Wisp as your panic button. You have Rolling Guard as your panic button. You have your passive. You can even run Brief Surge, or Brief Respite. Not Brief Surge. Breach Surge provides a blind, which is like a soft CC. So Wisp is an incredibly safe frame. And I've even had luck on running like a slight range with Silence on her 4 as just like a really comfy build where I'm doing like point defense because it staggers the enemies, right, when they come in through it. And 145 range is a 30-meter radius, and that covers enough of a tile set that as long as you're not standing in the middle of a big-ass empty room, you're generally CCing something, so it's an additional layer of CC. So the only thing you have to worry about with it is Breach Surge's range is less than Silence with 145. So if you're doing that, you want to Breach Surge onto a moat to double it, and that'll fix your issue easily. So, food for thought. There's a couple of builds. Here's a camp build. If you're operating a weapon that has multiplicative damage for regular mission running, Eclipse is a fantastic option. So you can just burn through something, maybe run a little bit more range or duration on it, swap out adaptation for something else. So like the Archoplasmor, this is really good on. If you're doing like a Cascade run and you're using an Incarnon weapon, here you go. So Wisp's Helminth spot is her 4. Obviously, you can do something with it if you really try to min-max. But to be honest, with all the other parts of her kit, I just don't see a reason to keep it. And late game, I mean, the radiation is kind of nice, but you could spread radiation with, I don't know, 100 other things. But anyway, have a blessed day, guys. Take it easy. I hope this was helpful. Hey, less than 50 minutes. Stay excellent, my dudes. Later.